Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to T Minus the podcast presented by 321. I'm your host, Daniel.
I'm Sheriff Hopper.
I'm Greg.
So, as you can tell, we're all dressed in our normal work attire today. It is October 31st, so we decided to dress down.
Ah, that's why we're in costume.
You're in costume?
Yeah. And today we are going to talk about political ads. Yay!
Spooky.
Well, the reason I want to talk about political ads is I guess, twofold. Is one, obviously, the election's coming up November 6th. And then two is I'm getting sick and tired of political ads on my Hulu and every other streaming service I had, because that's all it is being bombarded with. It's either that or Toyota commercials.
Maybe you should upgrade the premium, though. I think that's a bigger issue.
No, I am updated to premium.
They have commercial free
Yeah.
on Hulu.
Stop being cheap, Dan.
I have so many streaming services, though. Like,
That's a whole different
cable.
conversation. Your household budget's a different conversation. That you and your kids
that is
need
a
to
different
have.
conversation.
I feel bad for them.
Yes, it's very expensive to stream everything, apparently.
Doesn't hurt to be aware of Toyotathon and upcoming elections. Both very important activities every year.
No, it really is. I'm
every
either
other
getting a
year,
political
right?
ad, I'm getting a political ad, or I'm getting a Toyota commercial right now.
I wouldn't know. I'm able to scrape the $7 out from the couch every month.
Anyway.
We all just share the same account. We're all on Greg's account.
Oh,
Anyway,
okay, that's
so.
the reason. $250 each.
Hey, I don't need to work. Is Toyotathon like a fixed event?
I don't know.
I thought they just like literally
I like
posted
to
it out
think it
any
is.
random weekend.
It just doesn't
sales.
stop. It's a lifestyle. It's
Right.
not necessarily an event.
Once you go Toyotathon, you never.
Get out of Toyotathon. Ever.
Sure.
I mean, I was gonna workshop some sort of
Yeah.
better pun, but okay.
That's as far as it's going to go.
I'm a Honda guy.
But for me, I'm watching these political ads, and I'm being targeted from both sides because I'm more moderate, I guess. So I'm getting literally both sides on a regular basis. And majority of ads are just terrible. So take out political agenda aside, take out parties. The ads themselves are just not good, right? And Greg, I know you're really involved in local politics, and I'm just curious. I've never been a part of marketing when it comes to politics. I try to stay away from that. But for you, what's that process look like? Because I'm seeing like just really bad creative when it comes to, I guess, execution of whatever message they have usually.
Yeah, the issue is that I think a lot of people, especially in the spectrum that we operate in, being a marketing firm working with artists, they'll never understand it. Like, let's face it, if these didn't work, they wouldn't be running. They do work. It's the rhetoric behind it. It's the content that's within it, not necessarily the visualness of it. And I think it's in this weird place, right? Like, I think that people that operate in the field that we operate in are starting to understand that you can make anything look very, very nice. I mean, you can make a small business look like a major corporation with enough design work behind it. And this is still operating in an area that hasn't necessarily caught up to that. And so they're still using these cheesy ads recycled, but the text and the verbiage that's being used in it, the copy that's being used, it's still working. And everyone hates it and everyone continues to hate it, but everyone obviously still buys it up because the people that run these ads are the ones that are winning.
Yeah, I mean, like when you think about it from, like, when you look at debates or when you look at like when candidates speak and stuff like that, they're already pretty vague, unless they're hitting on specific points of their agenda. They can just afford to, essentially dance around. Florida, Florida is the greatest state. We're all Floridians, and we all need to come together and be part of one community so we can be better for all Florida. It's like then you just take that to the ad level. It's like you just afford to be even more vague. You don't have to really say anything.
The thing about it is what's good for us, and I say us is like, the typical voter, is not what's good for them. I mean, that's why you see a lot of people complain about, pushing against voter registration initiatives. It's because taking the safe route is the easy route. I mean, I run a lot of political debates on my off time, and people and candidates and incumbents reject debate invitations all of the time because it doesn't help them. Putting out the most vague statement and capturing you on something, even if it's the minutia of it is emotional, that's what works for them. I mean, it's the unfortunate business because you would love for candidates to campaign on what they're actually going to do, not what the other person does is wrong, and not even that, but what the other person stands for and represents as a whole is wrong. But that's what's working.
Well, the question for me is, so a lot of these candidates that I'm watching, obviously it's not like a presidential election, so it's more local level, state level, and a lot of the candidates you never heard of until you saw the ad, right?
Sure.
But after the ad, I still don't know anything about them or where their position is, what they stand for,
How about
not
their
even
opponent,
vaguely.
Do you know anything about their opponent, though, yet?
As I'm saying. So
So
it's somewhat, but I guess for me, it's just like, wouldn't you put out, even vaguely, like you said, what you stand for? Like, there was...
Did you vote yet?
Not yet.
Okay. I mean, I'm assuming you're going to vote, right?
Correct.
Are you going to look up every candidate before you do? Honestly.
Yes.
Honestly, every single candidate, every single issue?
No.
Okay, exactly. So that's all that matters, is that all these political ads and the people running it are putting their eggs in the basket of, you're really not going to do the research anyway, so let's get in front of you first, and let's get in front of you more, and that's it. Because do you know any state initiatives that were passed last cycle? Like, I mean, the specific bills? You don't. But what you can attach to is what presidential candidate you voted for, what national policy, whether it's guns or gun safety or environment, like whatever you attach yourself to in a broader sense is the only thing these localized, and when I say local, I mean from county to state to even congressional, the only thing that they can say that you can relate to is talking about, our president or some sort of broad policy that probably doesn't have an effect on the position as a whole. It's the only thing they have.
Is that why governors are talking about immigration?
100%.
Florida?
But that
like
does
Mexico
have an impact.
Immigration, yeah.
That does have an impact, though, in how our state allows and allocates resources to it. So I would go, even the governor's race can still be a little bit more broad, just like the president's race can. It's when you start having, your county commissioner start saying they back our president's policies, or they stand against our president's policies. Either way, it's the only thing that they have that they can latch onto. Because honestly, everyone says that they care about hearing what these people are going to do, but people don't. As soon as I start talking transportation or city planning with someone, you see the look glaze over their eyes. It's the truth of it. They really don't want to hear it. They just need to get out somehow.
Reminds me of that Parks and Recreation joke when Leslie Knope is running for mayor or county commissioner, just something along those lines. And she wants to avoid doing attack ads because she doesn't believe in them. So she's running an ad that just lists everything she's for. And it's just a huge scrolling list for about like a minute and a half, zooming across the screen with every single position and every where she stands on every single issue in the community. And all they're trying to do is get her to do an attack ad for Paul Rudd because he's literally a moron. And they're like, all you have to do is say he's a moron. And then you could win. Just show that you're smart. Just show that he's dumb. And
the issue is, honestly, people don't know what these positions do. So the ads honestly don't matter because people can campaign on whatever. I remember the best ad that I saw that really exemplifies what we're talking about. It was last cycle. And it was a city council candidate. I think it was Texas or somewhere in the Midwest. And essentially it was just him ranting on about like specific policy, whether it was transit or planning, and he was just following his wife around the house. And she was like, please elect my husband. Like, he needs someone else to talk to this about. And it's the truth of it. It's like, people are just saying, just trust this person and just put him in there because they won't shut up about, the nitty gritty. And that's great because this person obviously knows about it. But how do you know that if you're not paying attention to it? It's like we found this imbalance in expectations for what we want and what we're willing to hold ourselves to. And that's where these ads are really taking advantage of us, because they are appealing to what we're not holding ourselves to.
So it's interesting because I'm going to position how politics ads run similar to how 5 Hour Energy ads run. I'm dead serious. You know, the quality is not very good,
Sure.
right? They're all
Cell
about
phone quality.
Right.
Yeah.
It's cell phone quality usually.
I actually haven't been up at 5 a.m. recently, so I don't know what those ads
Right.
are like.
So they're pretty bad, and they're everywhere. The reason why is because they're using that money for media, you know, impressions, views, get as many
Targeting,
as possible.
right.
Yeah.
And they understand that their competition lacks that, right? Because they were the first to market, really, when it comes to the energy bottles or whatever. And there's thousands of them now. But those competitors don't have the ad money behind it to push it like they do. So how they stay in front of people is getting their crappy ad in front of them and just reminding them that they're there, right? And so and in marketing, you know, as we evolve, we realize that's a terrible model when it comes to most businesses. But in some business cases, it might work.
I'll
right?
run off of that example. I think the equivalent of that is complaining about the amount of like non-FDA or even FDA approved supplements that you see
Right.
on these commercials, and going like, but none of them are telling me what's actually in them. None of them are telling me what it does to benefit. It's just like feel better. Like it just speaks in
Right.
broad terms. But really, is anyone going to do the research on it? I've taken so many, and this sounds bad, I've taken so many different supplements and like, you know, protein boosters, and I have never done, like actually sat, even though I can say that I want to, I have never genuinely sat down and looked up every ingredient, because every ingredient's going to have a little good, every ingredient's going to have a little bad, and ultimately you'll figure out that none of them are that good for you. And it's the same exact thing with these political ads. Is everyone says they're going to look up every candidate ahead of time.
Of course.
They're not. The resources aren't easily available anyway. I mean, that's just, there's so many problems with the system as a whole that it just leaves these ads to be what they are, and people can complain, but it's the same thing with yard signs. Working in campaigns, you hear all the time that yard signs don't work. If they didn't work, people wouldn't spend thousands of dollars on it. Like, it's not about the numbers. The numbers and the direct ROI does not add up in politics, and it's the reason why polling doesn't work. Because you can ask somebody right after they leave the polls who they voted for, and they still won't tell you the truth. There is still some sort of moral connection between you and who you voted for, and nobody's ready to be fully honest with it, because you're tying your personal brand to somebody else's brand, and nobody else's brand is perfect.
Well, I think that, and everyone wants to say they have to believe in something, right? They stand for something.
Sure.
If you say you don't stand for anything, then you are looked down upon within society. So if you say legitimately, I don't care, I didn't vote, I don't care about any of the candidates. Either one, you try to be the wokest person possible to be like a system's flawed, and that's the reason
Sure.
I don't. Or I never heard someone say, I just don't care. It doesn't matter to me. Not because of political reasons or because of moral reasons or because they feel the system's broken and their vote doesn't matter. It's legitimately like, I just never heard someone say, I really don't care.
Here's my whole thing.
But that's honesty, though, for majority of people, is they'll hit red or blue and like walk out.
If you got a product and you bought a product, but you saw that product in an advertisement first, and they said to you, how did you hear about us? You answer honestly most of the time, right?
Or what you vaguely remember, yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. Because it doesn't matter. That doesn't matter, though.
Nobody will ever answer honestly and said, I voted because I saw a TV ad. But 90% of people, and that's
Voted
such a
'cause of
rough
TV
guess, and so
Right.
I'm not holding that as a fact check, but most people, a majority of people, will not admit that they either voted for somebody or voted against them based off of a TV ad or an internet ad. It's that simple. It just goes, I'm upset that candidate A is running so many ads. It's annoying me. So no matter what, I'm voting against them. Or they're running so many ads, it's the only name that's stuck with me. But no matter what, you do fall on one side of that. Nobody is completely indifferent unless they're a politico-psychopath like myself, you know, that just analyzes the meaning behind every little word. Generally, you either hate the person or love the person based off of that.
But do you feel that, again, getting away from even like bipartisan, but so looking at it saying the creative doesn't matter, but it does matter at some extent when you look at some ads, and you're like, they really didn't care. Like, they really think I'm that dumb. Like, regardless, you're like, you didn't put no effort into this whatsoever.
No. You're looking at it wrong.
Well, I'm looking at it from...
You think they don't care. They think you don't care.
No, that's what I'm saying. Well, they don't care because they think I
No,
don't
they care a lot. They care so much. That's totally sculpted that when you aren't thinking about it, there's certain things that are going to stick out. But you just look at it at face value and go, wow, this is terrible value. But there's certain things that stuck and you have no idea about it. You know how much money is behind those ads? Stupid amounts of money. So much money just so that you think the way that you do about it. Like, that's how much money. So much money that even when you think you're quote-unquote woke on it, you're not. That's the crazy amount of money that's in it.
Right. It's the Coca-Cola, Pepsi model of we're going to be everywhere, always, regardless of how you feel about us, and we're going to make sure that you know who we are.
Correct.
It's a good case study on brand image and why you need a brand image, and you can't just be a list of positions because when you associate the name on the ballot to the person, like, you see this guy's name and you remember his ads. He's wearing a uniform. He's got an American flag. He's got his kids. He's going to the park. And you just have that image. You don't really remember, like, well, where does he stand on the Sunrail being extended up to Tampa or not? Stuff like that. So and we're seeing in digital ads especially more of a focus on this empathetic brand imaging going on, more empathy ads, longer form than your traditional TV ad.
Right?
Yeah, because on TV, and I like your drug ads example because drug ads and political ads are very regulated by the FCC, but on the internet it's a little more gray area because it's not. Oh, this isn't an ad. This is just a YouTube video. It's not. There's no like paid promotion behind it. It's just a video, and it happens to go viral because they're backing it with $20,000 secretly
from other people. Right.
Now the nirvana of a political ad, like the ultimate goal, like what everyone strives for, is what a couple candidates are doing now. I mean, one who's not a candidate anymore, but it was what, President Obama did. Some people can say that's what one of the current governor candidates, Andrew Gillum's doing, when they can move from being a platform and a candidate to a movement. That's when you see a difference in ads. When they have a story, a legitimate story, and they can hit on particular parts of their experience that are really going to, project them in that position, that's when you see the difference between a candidate and a movement. And every candidate tries to be a movement, and that is what is so hard to do. I mean, our current president did it. The president before did it. Before that, it was a while before you saw it. I mean, you saw namesakes, right? Like the Bush namesake, right. But you didn't see a movement behind them. And that is what everyone's trying to do now. And what people also forget about is you can't fight a movement. I mean, if you're an opposing candidate against one of these movement type candidates, you're just screwed. You're just a guy in history that was their first downfall or their second downfall. You know what I mean? You're done. I mean, you can't fight that type of momentum.
I wouldn't, obviously I'm not old enough to go back so many presidents, but sure. I think Obama was the first one. I was just like, regardless of political stance and policy, I was just like, that's very good marketing.
But there's certain things before that. So, to go back, it was like when President Clinton, when he was a candidate, came out on Arsenio Hall and started playing the saxophone. And it's like, whoa, this guy's cool. This guy's a person.
Right.
That's a new movement in itself where it's like politicians aren't politicians anymore.
Right.
It's like the dude next door that can go off and, represent me.
So I think that, and you see other candidates that have failed trying to, I guess, imitate prior to other presidential candidates that tried and failed, and it lacked the authenticity, right, of trying to get involved in that and trying to push that movement further forward where it wasn't even your movement to begin with.
Yep.
So that's where it falls short. So after Gillum, if Gillum wins, and after Gillum is another governor that runs for Democrat and pushes it, but tries to take the same stance and push that forward the same way he did, it will fail completely.
Yep.
Right? Because it wasn't authentic to that person; it was authentic to him. So for Obama, it was authentic for Obama, and then the next candidate tried to do the same exact thing basically, and it fell short.
Are we not allowed to say her name?
Voldemort? No. No, I guess I'm just trying to keep
I was
as
talking
many.
about Gary Johnson. But
I guess I was trying to keep as many names out of it to keep it subjective. On,
Gotcha.
Yeah, and that's where, like I said, I didn't want to mention any of the gubernatorial candidates, but that's where it's just a clear difference there in the ads that they're making is. The whole story of my mother was a bus driver and, I was at a local school and was SGA president and went on. It showed like the building. It goes back to storytelling that we look for in traditional ads that we consider, exemplatory.
So for me, I look at brand and say, we do advertising for obviously companies, and we're in the industry and we evaluate other companies that do the same thing. There's a line where legally you can't lie, like for product or service, right?
Not in politics.
That's where I'm going right now. So in politics and advertising, you can blatantly lie about things, and in advertising, it's like you don't do that because you can get sued.
You can get sued in politics for that.
But do they?
A lot of times the issue is that there are so many legal professionals behind every ad making sure it ties back to something legitimate. Nobody's doing the research. You can take any quote out of context. You can take any number and twist it a particular way. Businesses do that too. There's nothing happening there that isn't happening with business results saying, oh, well, our medication is able to do this and that, or our supplement's able to do this and that.
And they do get sued for it, though, because they're like, well, you said it does this, and it actually doesn't do that at all, right? So even the company that advertised, there was the toe company that made the shoes, they had the toes on it, it's just better for your posture and natural walking, all this stuff. Yeah, whatever. They got sued because they're just like...
Because somebody wore it. Or when you see a political ad that is a lie, and say you've blatantly... Are you going to call it in to the elections office? Because are you? Because it seems like you've been in this situation before and you haven't called it in. So that's the thing, is that, again, we don't hold people to the expectations we expect them to hold themselves to.
But I guess, like, to that example, speaking as a citizen, it's like, what do we do? Do we report that to, like, campaign commissions?
Yeah, no, to the elections office.
I don't think it'd go anywhere.
Yeah. That's the thing. It's like
there's too many confounding variables.
Well,
politics is less objective.
Exactly.
They'll just blame like the House, something like that. What were you saying?
No, like when Volvo essentially reinforced their cars and had a monster truck go over it, they could actually go out and find that reinforced thing, say that, you guys were modifying reality and, we're doing something obviously true. They get sued, but you can literally go on, say anything you want about politics, and let's say that 2% of people, who see that ad call it in, but then what happens? That person wins or they don't. They win, it gets brushed under the rug. If they lose, nobody cared.
Well, it's just most of the time it can tie back to something. It's that most people don't follow specific bills and the language that's in there. And I mean, I went through it recently where a debate I was hosting, one of the representatives said they passed 3 of 6 bills, but really when you look on the House, they failed. But really he passed them as amendments later on. I mean, it's like, well, everything has some sort of twist to it. And until we start, learning this stuff, which I guess defeats the purpose of having a representative represent us, there's always going to be the problem there. I mean, that's why in its core the system's broken, and that's the result of why these ads aren't to where they should be.
So do you feel... I feel that voters are getting a little bit smarter as we get older.
They think they are.
Just because of more age information and false information.
We're more informed, or we have more access to
more access for information.
Over access.
Right.
Yeah.
Over access, misinformation, and information are mixed in there. So as, say, 10, 15 years goes by, do you feel there will be a shift in how politicians are marketing themselves because of this? Because I feel that impression-based marketing, I'm just going to call it that because that's what it is, right, will start dying down. It'll be more focused on either conversion or affirmation of, their audience. Does that make sense? Since we can target so much now, you can really
They're just
focus.
Play to each echo chamber.
Yeah, you can really focus on those echo chambers and really get their pain points across to try to either convert or confirm their
I mean,
for
I
you.
preach this offline all the time. It's really easy to do modern day polling with Facebook and Google. You can go to the supervisor of elections and pull the voting roll. It's public record. Everything from how often you've voted, not who you're voting for, but who you've donated to, your party affiliation. You can upload all of that information into Facebook and Google as your client list and target these people directly. And depending on how you want to break down that voter roll, you can get some really specific info from people. You can target them with surveys that are essentially only hitting that neighborhood or just that house specifically, and find out how they feel about issues and target them really, really specific to issues. That's the next step in political advertising. You're going to start getting some really, really, really hyper-focused ads. I mean, here's the thing. If you don't want ads, I suggest voting early because they stop once you vote. No one cares about you. You're not worth it anymore.
Right.
So it's one of those things that it goes back to everyone hating the Facebook ads they're being constantly hit with, or retargeting ads. At the end of the day, ads are what keep these services running, that provide us with Facebook for free, essentially. And at the end of the day, there's always going to be ads happening. They're just going to be getting more and more targeted, which some argue is great. I argue it's bad because now you're going to be more and more in your silo. At the end of the day, sometimes you might see an ad for somebody else that might make you reconsider something.
But couldn't those same people target you on the opposite side? So, like you said,
sure,
you would have saw someone's ads, but couldn't that same person now target you knowing your position and try to convert?
At the end of the day, running a campaign is a math equation.
Right.
You break down how many people within your party or how many people any which way agree with what you agree with, and you try to silo out that audience, and you hit that audience as many times as you can and get them out, as many of them out to vote as you can. And so in some instances, it just won't make sense. If you're somebody fighting for gun reform, you're just going to toss out the people that were for guns. And it's going to make it really easy to do that. And it's going to be really easy to chisel out your audience and just really steroid them up and juice them up.
You have to play it safe jumping to the opposite audience, trying to convert them over. It's locally, I've been getting mailers. So they must know I'm registered one way, so I'm getting mailers attacking one of the candidates that would have been under my party affiliation. And it's funny because I wouldn't have been so aware of this candidate if they weren't attacking them on these flyers every day.
Oh, yeah.
And just using her own quotes against her. So it's like, she said this. And I'm like, I absolutely support that. Like, now you're just advertising for her, you guys.
Yeah.
It doesn't make her look bad. It's making you look
Yeah, that's where I
incompetent.
think it's a little different, right? So if you're going to target someone that is on the opposite side, you don't attack the opposite side's viewpoint, right? You try to have empathy and try to let them see what your side looks like.
In a rational world.
In a rational world, right? You know what I mean? Does that make sense?
But you attack them as a person. You attack their essence, their being.
Right.
Destroy their brand identity.
But you're saying, I believe everything. You're going on the other side of the coin and saying this is why we're against this, and you're like, I'm actually for that. So and you know I'm for that.
What
so
I'm saying is that
sense.
if we keep we are going to keep going down this path, it's going to get worse and worse.
Oh yeah.
When this will get better is almost the opposite of like every other industry. It's going to be when we take the internet a little bit more out of it. When we use it as what it is, a communication platform, and not use it as the live all be all of everything, and start interacting with these people again. Because a politician is really just studies people. They're there to represent people, and we're taking that facet out of it, and we're siloing ourselves into an echo chamber, and we're not considering viewpoints. We're not even learning about viewpoints. Nothing's going to change.
And that's what I'm saying, where I think it'll be a little more progressive, because I feel there is the age of information where it's more accessible, but it's over information because you don't know what's true, what's not, what's fake, what's real, and you need to have some critical thinking involved, and we're kind of lacking that as a society, I feel, right now.
I feel like going forward, though, it's just, that's definitely true, and we're going to only have access to more and more information, but these ads are going the opposite direction. I don't know if it's survival of the fittest and they're just working better, or maybe they're just cheaper, but we're seeing ads with less and less information and just more and more
I think
guys playing with their kids and stuff like that.
Yeah, I think it's definitely just that Pepsi Coke mentality of, when you get to the polls, you're going to see one of two names for any position, and you're most likely to just bubble in the one that you know.
The other thing is that, we're in our own bubble here. We're in a very progressive city. You work in a very progressive environment. And like I said, it's when you start driving out of Florida, when you start driving to some of these areas, it makes a lot more sense why these ads are still running. You don't even have to leave Florida.
Do you know where I live?
Yeah, 100%. Right? It's like when somebody, that's a lot more conservative gets elected, you get it because you see it.
I understand completely.
Right. And that's the problem, is that it's like those ads still work because the majority of people, the people that aren't the 4 people in this room that do look up things to a degree, a lot more people don't.
Yeah, that's a good point. I've only been thinking of the stuff I've been seeing, really. I think this year will be telling either way. After 2018, we're going to see, based on who won and what kind of ads they were doing, because we're seeing a lot of anti-establishment candidates dethroning these long-sitting establishment politicians, and that's happening in New York, that's happening in Florida, Texas.
But I think that's a reaction of the last vote.
Yeah, okay, that's a good point.
To be honest with you, it is a blatant reaction to the last vote.
And let's see if it even works, because the thing about it, the reason why Congress hasn't removed term limits is because experience matters when it comes to getting things done and working with other parties. And so you're going to take away the establishment. Let's see how the rookies do at working the system.
Right.
Unfortunately, it is a system. There's no beating around that bush. So
yeah, it's what I'm getting at, I guess, is establishment candidates, from what I've been seeing here at least, are running the traditional ads. They're just using their same exact TV ad on Hulu and on YouTube and on Facebook. And that's just sloppy, because you can use longer videos on Facebook. Why would you do a 30-second ad? You can do a 2-minute ad. Yeah. And then we're seeing some of the more, let's just call them younger candidates, doing these like super high production 2-minute videos. The case study I had on my phone, there's a candidate produced a video for $20,000, and they got $300,000 in donations attributed to that YouTube video. It wasn't even promoted, it just went viral. And it cost $20,000 to produce. So I think just with an ROI like that, you're going to see a little more focus to digital.
You build great content and great advertising that could have more earned media, in a sense.
That's still a negative outcome. It's still a negative outcome, because that $300,000, I'll bet a majority of it came from outside the district. And so now we're playing the game of like what's good for advertising and what's good for like people. And what's good for people is like representatives that represent them. It goes to the whole thing of like buying elections. It's the same thing as corporations doing it when like California is buying an election in Florida. It's a negative with the system as a whole.
And I think the other thing, the kind of elephant in the room around this topic is like, how effective are these ads when people are already have their minds made up? Like in politics, like, now more than ever, I feel like, the effectiveness of whether an ad is going to get me to go out and vote or vote for a specific candidate is far less likely that happen to already as opposed to me just being predisposed.
You identify, though, in a particular direction, not by party, but by direction, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think a lot of it winds up at trying to hit people that just don't identify either way or another, and that still aren't educated on it. And that's why you don't see a lot of these. You don't see a lot of these ads during the primary.
But that's what I'm saying is like there are people who aren't educated, who aren't going to do the research, who might be hit with these ads, who are still going to vote regardless of what any of those other things happen.
Correct. Well, those ads are targeting them, though, because nothing else is. They're not reading a voter guide. They're not looking at the newspapers or endorsements. They're just simply, going to vote on election day, and those ads are just trying to get as many of them to go in their direction as possible.
Like I can see it based on the type of ads I'm getting now, because, like I said, I am considered, I guess, moderate, independent. Sure. If you look at my track record of voting, it's all over the place. So they're like, hey, everyone is like, hey, I need that guy, right? I need to talk to that guy. And I'm like, oh my God, stop, please. I get ads, and maybe I need to call them directly and be like, you need to stop. It's 50 and over seniors. We have the power to move things. And I see that ad every night, and I'm like, what am I watching that they think I'm 65 years old?
Right.
Like, I'm serious. I'm sitting here. I'm like, am I watching Golden Girls or something? Like,
but have you messaged their page and said anything?
I don't care enough.
No, but see, that's the thing, though.
Let them spend money. I don't care enough.
And that's true about it.
And I'm like, why are you on Hulu anyway? 50 and older is not the demographic to be on Hulu. You need to stop advertising on Hulu.
See, it's funny because I know that ads can target me, can target specifically by the person in the district. I go ahead and I message them. I go, I ask them, why are you targeting me? And because most of the time they either need a little education themselves, or because there's a reason why. Because again, they're looking for the donation outside of the district.
Right.
And so they are probably targeting you terribly, but I'd love to see them try to rationalize that they're hoping that you'll vote for your grandmother's sake or something. You know, I'd love to see the BS answer they give you there, where they're like, "Yeah, but you have a grandparent, right?"
Like, no, they're both dead. Like,
yeah, right. Watch them really freeze. Then, condolences, thoughts and prayers. Hang up.
Like, seriously, I have no idea. Every night I get it, I'm looking at my wife. I'm like, what are we watching that they think that I'm 50? Like, seriously, I have no idea.
Trust me, it goes to content also. It's like a tragedy happens and every single congressperson copy and paste the condolence, and shoots it on theirs.
But, like, for me, if I'm a strategist and targeting people that are 50 and older to go out and vote, and it doesn't tell you who to vote for, it just says we have the power to vote and we are the mass that can control, blah, blah, blah. It's all about being the mover mentality. So I'm like, why would I be on Hulu for one? Right? Like, that's not the demo that you want to hit is... Hey, we have the power. I'm like, there's no we watching this.
Dude,
right now.
I don't know, man. My fiance's family, her grandmother in Venezuela is on our Hulu account. So they don't have bread. I didn't know they had internet. They're on her Hulu account. So
all these telenovelas.
Listen, all the soaps are on it. Yeah. So it goes far. They're not advertising on Netflix. Netflix is so millennial. Hulu's got reach.
There you go.
I'm always surprised at where you can find seniors digitally. Like, just doing our own campaigns, it's like we're seeing 95% of people over 65 using mobile devices for certain ads that we're running, and it's just like, how are 65-year-olds like clicking on their phone? Like, my grandpa can't even post on Facebook. Like, he thinks it's Google still.
But see, that's the other thing, is that there's not a lot of like historical numbers behind this. Right. And so a lot of times they're still just throwing stuff at the wall to see what sticks. That's probably why you see it a couple times, more than a couple times, the same TV ad online, because it's like they're A/B testing it. Like, where are the numbers coming from? If you take the same ad and that's the control factor, is it getting better numbers through TV or through digitally? And then eventually, like I said, things go in baby steps. It's crazy how far behind politics is from the rest of the world, but there's so much regulation that goes in. Up until this year, you didn't need to put a disclaimer on social ads for on Facebook. Up until this year, and that was an election rule. That's not even like a Facebook thing. That was an election rule. So I mean, anything digital, unless it was your website, didn't need the little disclaimer at the bottom. So they just catch up slowly to things. It's funny, by next cycle, they're gonna maybe be touching on some sort of AR or VR in some way, but that's already behind from what businesses are doing. So,
and that's what I'm saying is I'm looking at and watching these ads, and obviously we are in an agency that does marketing advertising for other companies, and we try to be as progressive as possible to drive results. So looking at these ads, I'm like, cringeworthy, majority of them. But then we're saying they work, and I'm like, do they though? Like, are they really working? But I think we could do better.
I think it's
not we as the company. I mean, we as a people. Sorry.
Yeah. I think it's just politics is marketing and politics is moving in slow motion, because they only get the opportunity to do once every 2 to 4 years. With occasional exceptions for special elections and everything. And so, like, our creative team, when we are, putting together like a TV ad, we're like, great, we know what to do because we just did this 2 months ago. We're ready. We got all of our stuff together. We have this workflow, and here we go. We're going to produce this ad. These guys only have to produce 1 to 2 ads every 4 years. Like, you know, so I think part of it is practice.
Well, I agree with that, because you can look at even on a domesticated government level of how behind the times they are in systems, operations, digital, pushing the bar forward. You're like, you always go to the DMV and be like, this could work so much better, right? So even from a local level, you see like they're not thinking too far ahead. Military, they are. Everything else, not so much.
It's also expensive, man.
It is.
Like,
Exactly.
I mean, like, and you're starting to get to the point where you're like, oh, it's affordable for anybody, but you're just getting there. I mean, you got to look, even like 2016 to film a commercial is still going to be 25 to 50K for a good one for TV quality,
right?
You know, and it only went up from there. And then it's not even about filming it; it's about the distribution of it. You can't spend 30K on a commercial and then put $2,000 of ad buy behind it. So, you know, before the internet and social media was prevalent, it's like TV ad buy is expensive. It's just
right, no,
like,
and I agree with that. That's what I'm in a digital age. We understand how to stretch a dollar now, right? When it comes to visibility, impressions, engagement, we try to as much as possible. So for me, I'm like, you spent $5,000 on an ad and spent $150,000 on media. Take 15 more and put in better production, and you can stretch that $130,000 now a lot further nowadays than $150,000 could 15 years ago.
Here's where I agree with Jeff, though. It's like, we do this all of the time. There are certain people like us that do it just for politics, and they don't do it the amount that we do it, and they do it with very indifferent intentions that we do it. And it's like, I mean, let's face it, why aren't more agencies like us working in the political sphere? Because it's not as profitable, and because you're attaching your reputation to somebody else's reputation.
Correct.
So you already are limited in what people from our sphere are going to be working in that sphere. Now you go and say, well, you're only doing a couple, 2 to 4 years, and there's so much it needs to accomplish. It has to accomplish so many things in the copy and verbiage of that ad, so much more than it does visually, because you're going to run that on radio, online,
right,
so many different places, that it's like, it just is almost trying to accomplish so much with people that are so pigeonholed in a specific area, that it's like, okay, there's so much that we know that we can do in the political sphere. Why aren't we doing it? You know, there's a reason behind it all. It's the same thing with like changing the behavior of people, changing the behavior of businesses. We're seeing that now. Publix makes a donation, they have a sit-in going on in there. It's like businesses are trying to dabble in politics and very quickly running away from it, because they're realizing the outcome that comes from it. Because we live in a 24-hour news cycle where before, when a business made a donation, not everyone found out about it.
Right.
Now, everyone does. And so it's just like, having so much information is changing the dynamics in way that donations work in politics and companies interact with politics. And that goes to how we would interact with politics working at a company. Now, obviously, if we all wanted to donate our time and work on a campaign, we would, but not everyone's doing it. You know what I mean? And so it's like, you have such a carved niche in political advertising that isn't staying up with everything else, because they don't have to. They're not trying to. They're accomplishing something completely different, and it just doesn't appear the same way that we're doing it.
And I think we all can agree that what we do and how we do it is a very different approach. Like I said, I look at it as 5-hour energy. I look at it like you said, supplement ads. It's just like, we just want to make sure that you know who we are, get it out there in front of you, and that's really it. For us, we connect every dollar to every dime that's made, right? We connect every KPI, every goal, like that's what we're measured on. So I try to hold most advertising and marketing the same idea, is how good are you converting people? And in politics, that's very tough to do.
But here's the question, and this is a funny part about politics, is it's when you find out your KPIs, it's too late. You find that out after election day. Yeah. It's like,
true.
It's like your conversion, like it's just like a business, right? You worry about impressions and click-through rate, but nothing matters except the conversions, right? Nothing matters except the dollars that you get in. Well, the dollars are votes, and you don't find it all happens on one day, or over the span of 1 month, if you want to talk about early voting and all. It happens over this little period of time, and you don't know until it's done.
So Black Friday sales.
Yeah.
Black Friday marketing.
You can't analyze your analytics until you've already lost or won.
Yeah.
And so that's the thing is everyone goes back to 2016 now and goes, well, what did they do wrong? How can we change that for 2020?
Right.
That's 4 years. So you're trying to compare where even the public was 4 years
And
ago
then
to where they are now.
involved and everything.
Technology,
Yeah, all this stuff.
everything. Like it's almost like a weird bundle of past, present, and future that you have to combine there, and it's almost impossible to work through that core.
Yeah, I think, like I said, I think it's always going to be up for discussion. I would love to see where it goes in 4 years, I'd say. And actually,
You'll
2
be
years,
disappointed.
I will.
You'll always be disappointed.
I will be disappointed.
Judging by this conversation, you're always going to be disappointed as long as you work in this industry.
No, there's two, I think, campaigns I could think of off top that actually did well. But that's
Out
obviously
of
more
how
high-
many?
I
Thousands,
agree.
right?
Agreed.
And so that's where I go. Like
Agreed.
in 4 years, we're going to
Agreed.
be living in 2022, and they're going to be, in
2018,
2018,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And so it's like it's crazy. It doesn't,
I'm not expectation of government advertising is never going to be top notch. Just
Sure.
say it's not going to be like a Nike or Adidas worth of progressive advertising. So
Sure. I mean, the interesting thing, though, to jump around that is like getting around advertising now. Now you have people like our current president who go, I don't need advertising.
my
budget as
advertising
much."
is organic.
So,
right.
I mean, he didn't run for governor, but John Morgan made a very valid point. He goes, unless somebody's going to drop $120 million in advertising, they're not going to beat me, because that's what he spends already for his business.
Right.
Like, they're just not going to ever topple him when it comes to ad spend, because he has this for that. Imagine what he's going to do for this.
Yeah.
It's just impossible. So now you're seeing people that are political newcomers that don't necessarily need the ad spend. They're running on the name. You have like The Rock saying he's going to run for president now. Trust me, The Rock's not going to need that much ad spend. Everyone knows who The Rock is. You throw The Rock and Trump on a ballot, people are going to be able to make their decision pretty easily just based off of WWE versus The Apprentice. So, I mean, you're also getting to this point now where ad spend might be even less important than we think in 4 years. So it all comes in waves, and there's no predicting it, and we'll just have to see where it goes.